So today's webinar is all about rollover in Talis Aspire, and we're hoping to give you a checklist for the whole process of both rolling over your reading lists and rolling over your copyright cleared materials. So first of all, a definition for those of you who just want a recap. Rollover is the process of copying your Talis Aspire content from one academic session into another. So for example, that could be semester 1, 2020 into semester 1, 2021. That would be the simplest way to do it. But we do know that everyone is different, and some courses or some units or papers can run semester after semester. So if you are rolling individual lists, you can do semester 1 into semester 2 and so on. But that's the basics. So rollover is copying your content from one academic session into another. Today we're going to be talking about how you prepare for rollover, your options for rolling over in Talis Aspire reading lists, and also your options for rolling over in Talis Aspire digitized content. So we are going to start with reading lists because if you are rolling over reading lists and your copyright cleared material, you should be doing reading lists first. That's the best workflow. So we're going to be talking about the benefits of rollover, time period choices, decisions to make, other types of preparation that you need to do. We're going to be doing a quick demo of your options and also offering some time for questions. My cat's decided that now is the time that she wants to have a drink, so that apologies for the clacking in the background. So, benefits for using rollover. So the first one is making sure that you can clearly identify between versions of a reading list. So in relation to that, we're talking specifically about time periods. So you can use the time period to differentiate between different versions of a reading list. If you've got two reading lists on the same course code, but you know that one academic teaches it in semester 1 and a different academic teaches it in semester 2, and they have two separate lists, you can clearly identify that from the reports menu in a number of different ways, but the easiest way is time periods. Related to time periods, it allows students to see a list as it was when they studied. So it's particularly useful for students that are progressing through their bachelor or undergraduate and are doing a report on a particular subject, and they remember that there was a really good resource that they read back in semester 1 or back in first year that really clearly identified what that topic area was, and so they want to refresh that reading in their mind. So that's one of the main benefits for students. There's benefits for the library, both the library acquisitions team. So for acquisitions, you can see when titles are needed by. So if it's needed in semester 2, you can structure your workflow and make sure that you've got those items in time for the start of that course. If titles are shared across several lists, you can see at a glance what lists are going to be using that title and also the number of students that are going to be requiring to access. So if you've got two lists occurring at the same time and on that list that title is a highly recommended title, you might need to purchase more copies of that item, or it might be that that isn't a title that you should be getting in E. And even though it's maybe a little bit more expensive, if it's got a high number of students needing it, then that might make you need to, to purchase that electronic version. In terms of collection management, you can clearly see what items should be moved to different locations. So for example, if you've got high use collections or short-term loan collections, you can use the time periods on reading lists to identify what needs to be in those short-term loans and then what can come out of those short-term loan collections at what times during the year. It offers an opportunity for updates. So academics will hopefully you'll be communicating with your academics that you're rolling over your lists, and it gives them an opportunity to see, okay, I've got a new version of my reading list. Maybe now is a good time to make sure that I've got you know, modern resources on there, or the most up-to-date resources for my students to really benefit from that. And lastly, but not least, there's analytics. So in terms of available in the product itself, we've got the dashboard on individual reading lists, so academics can jump on and see what students are clicking on, what their reading intentions are, what they're making notes on. In terms of advanced MIS, you've got the ability to compare between time periods of a certain module code and that sort of thing. So there's some really rich analytics that are available by using time periods, and on the back of that using rollover. So preparation. So the first thing we'd recommend that you do is set up or ensure that your new time period, the time period that you're going to be rolling over to, is available in your reading lists, and it's got the dates that you are wanting. And this is particularly important because of, in light of the COVID-19, you might have had to adjust your teaching sessions. So therefore, if you do that, you might just want to make sure that you've let us know that your new dates are different to what you requested at the start of the year or at the end of last year for this year. Another thing that you want to do is ensure that the time period that you're rolling over from is available. That means that you've not hidden it from the view on your reading list. And the easiest way, the fastest way to see that is to go to your My Lists area, create a new list. This is the fastest way. And then just use the drop down and see what time periods are available. This is our demonstration tendency, and our time periods are shocking, terrible. So if you have a really long list like this and you can actually see, you know, there are some time periods here from 2015, you might want to hide those time periods. And equally, if the time period that you want to roll over from is not available on this list, just raise a support ticket and let us know that you want that time period to be visible again. Checking your lists and hierarchy, I'll get onto that in a minute. Considering switching on the new list edit. So we know that it might be a good opportunity for you to enable it if you've not already defaulted to that new list, new experience. And also consider which method you're going to be rolling over, whether you're going to be using the bulk time period rollover or whether you're going to be using the targeted rollover via the All Lists report. And then we're also going to be talking about communication with your academics. So we've talked about time periods. When you're considering time periods, it is also really important to make sure that the slug that you give us, it's an awesome name, slug, that you give us for the time period matches the code that is available and being used for that time period in your learning management system. That just helps the LTI linking work as best it can. So just a reminder on that. So checking your lists. The main way to do this is by using the reports. So we want to check for unpublished lists and check for lists that have unpublished changes. And to do that, you'd use the All Lists report, and you'd filter to the time period that you're rolling over from, and also the status of those lists. So first you would filter for unpublished lists or draft lists, and then you might want to contact the academic and sort of say, you know, your list is unpublished. Were you aware of that? And also, we're just about to complete rollover, and that means that currently your list won't be copied across into the next time period. It might be that instead of publishing it and then rolling over, it was just them preparing the list for this year, in which case you can guide them through updating the time period associated with that list. Or it might be that they accidentally forgot to publish their list, and so you do want to publish that list for the remainder of the current time period, and then roll it over as well. The same for checking unpublished changes. So it's important to know that rollover will only take a copy of the published version of a list, so any unpublished changes won't be copied across. So again, that's a good thing to point out to your academics and those people editing lists, that if those edits aren't published, they'll have to redo those edits on the new version. You might take it upon yourself to bulk publish those changes before rollover, but it could be that someone's accidentally removed an item from a list and they don't actually want that visible on the published version of the list, which is why they've left it as unpublished. So it is a good idea to have that communication with your academics and understand the reasoning behind why that's unpublished. Check the lists that have already been rolled over. So some of your academics or some library staff might have accidentally archived a list. And so the fastest way that you've decided to get that list available in the time period is to actually change the time period of an older list. That's fine, it's fine, but it does have some roll-on effects. So if that list has already been rolled over, it won't be able to be rolled over again. So we would always recommend to use the copy list process in those instances, just so that you will be able to roll over that list again, and you won't be wondering why, there were 350 lists available to roll associated with that time period that you were rolling over from, and only 280 of those lists copied across. Why did that happen? So to sort of stop that confusion and stop that sort of blocker, we do recommend that you check for lists that have already been rolled over and then make those actions, whether it is manually copying the list into the new time period so that it becomes available before you do your rollover, or asking your academic what they want to do, because there could be a reason why they decided to move an older time period, that time periods list. It's also a good idea to check your lists for active reviews. This is particularly important if you are rolling over and archiving that list. So we do have a few more information on this. So as we've said, rollover will only take a copy of the published version of the list. And it's a good idea to clear your reviews before you roll over, just so that you make sure that your reviews area is nice and tidy and it only contains the reviews that you're actually going to get to. If you check out your reviews area and you see that you've got a whole bunch of old reviews, and because you haven't archived the list yet, those reviews are still sitting there as active and can be actioned. So you might choose to, bulk close those. If you do choose to archive at the point of rollover, the lists will roll over and be archived, and the review itself will also be archived. So that's an important thing to know in terms of your acquisitions team. If they're still processing their reviews, you might just want to let them know that you're going to be rolling over, and so they need to prioritize getting those reviews sorted and closed before you roll over. If you don't archive your list, as we've said, any open reviews can be continued. So it might be that if your acquisitions team get back to you and say, we just don't have the time to complete these reviews, you might update your process for this time period so that you're not archiving on rollover, that you're archiving at a later date. And you can do that via the All Lists report. It's important to note this last dot point, that rollover will not trigger a review until by itself. So the academic will need to republish the list if they want it to be reviewed. This is true of any instance, whether you've got forced reviews enabled or anything else. Rollover won't trigger a review. You'll need to manually publish that list to trigger that review, or manually request the review if you've got the acquisitions role. The next thing to do is update your hierarchy. Why should you do this before rollover? It does a number of things. So we recommend that you'd update the existing nodes for any code changes, and that's particularly important for linking in your learning management system so that it uses the new updated codes. But also it's really important when it comes down to rolling over your digitizations, because it means that you'll have pre-warning of any codes that are changing. Update any parent associations, and that's really for reporting purposes. So if a course changes from maybe like a business parent for now, and it changes to under law or vice versa, it is nice to have those parent associations accurate for when you're reporting and identifying what areas are going well and what areas in the university you might need to push for engagement. It's also really important to create new courses. So your academics can start to create lists, or your library can start to create lists for those new courses. And as I said, have that information ready for when you roll over your digitisations. So you've got a few decisions to make at this point in time before rollover. So before rollover, if you've not already, we do recommend, as I said earlier, that you consider rolling out the default of your list editing interface to the new list edit. New season, new session, new functionality. And you can bundle it in with the communication that you send to your academics. Decide when you're going to roll over your reading list and ensure that you've got enough time to process your digitisations before that reading list and those digitisations are going to be needed. Once you've got those dates for rollover, you can start to think about when you're going to need to start communicating with your academics. Choose what rollover strategy you're going to use, whether you're going to use the bulk rollover, so taking all lists associated with the time period and copying it into a new time period, or using the targeted rollover, so selecting individual lists from the all lists report and copying those over to a new time period, rolling those over. Select whether you're going to be rolling over to draft or published. And that's important for the communications out to your academics and communicating what you're expecting them to do with those lists. And selecting whether you're just going to bulk publish those lists at a later date. So you're going to be rolling over to draft, but then bulk publishing, a week before semester or 3 weeks before semester. And then as we talked about a few moments ago, whether you're going to bulk archive at the same time as rolling over, or whether you're going to bulk archive at a later date. I've sort of said this throughout the presentation so far. Communication is really, really important. And I have sort of focused on communicating with academics, but it is really important to communicate with everyone who's going to be involved at some point in terms of managing the reading list. So it will be the list publishers, your liaison librarians should be aware of your rollover strategy and potential dates that they might need to be aware of. Your acquisitions team should be involved to ensure that they've got the processes and they know when certain things are going to be happening and what their tasks might need to be after that. So in terms of communication, we talk about prior to rollover, and that would be wording people up on what's going to be happening and what they can expect from rollover, when they can expect it to occur, and what they need to do afterwards, what you're expecting them to do in order for the rollover process to be complete. And that might be publish all of your changes by a certain date, or if you're deciding to publish everything, might be that the academic needs to let you know why they've not published any unpublished changes. And also let them know that any changes on that date might not be copied across onto the rollover copy, depending on when that rollover is picked up. So it's a good idea to recommend that they don't do any changes on the date of rollover, just so that they can ensure that those changes that they do make, they'll need to make it on that new version of the reading list. Post rollover, we recommend that you have another set of comms. So let them know that it's occurred and what's happened and the next steps. And that's where you'd identify that any changes that you make now to the reading list associated with the original time period X, will not be copied across onto the rollover copy, that they will need to manage that themselves. Do you have a question? Will the rollover list get the latest number of students as identified in the unit hierarchy? Traditionally, no. You'll need to, for those who don't have automated hierarchy, they will need to manually update those student numbers when they they do the hierarchy update. If you've got automated hierarchy and part of that is updating the student numbers, it will take those updated student numbers from the hierarchy node. So that's communication. And when you're thinking about communication, it is also about identifying what types of communication you're going to be doing. So whether that's email, or whether you're going to do some homepage messages, both on the library homepage or on a staff intranet homepage or on the reading list homepage itself, adding a message there, letting them know when rollover is and where they can find more information. Any other locations that I've not talked about, you might do a library newsletter, or you might be really lucky and be involved in some faculty meetings, in which case you might want to raise it there. Just think about where you're communicating, what contact you've got with your academics, and where might be the best place to have that for your university, because everyone's different, and everyone has different channels and different contact with their faculty, with their academics. Another thing to consider is timing. So we talked about a little bit earlier about identifying when you're going to roll over. And once you've got that, you can identify, okay, when do I need to start having my communication? So prior to rollover, that might be a couple of months out or a month out. Then you might want to do one a couple of days before rollover, just as a reminder, and then post rollover. Just have another question. Could Talis develop functionality to notify list owners of rollover using the contact information embedded in the list? The list publisher. So there is some consideration using advanced information in advanced MIS to sort of trigger that that process of contacting your academics. It is something that you might want to join the developer community, because I know that they had a few comms about that. But I think there is also an idea on the ideas forum related to that as well. So this is just a suggested timeline for rollover. So pre-rollover in Talis via reading list. So as we said before, notify Talis of your time periods, and also it's a good idea to let us know when you're planning to roll over, just so that we can make sure that not everyone is wanting to do it on the same day. That's purely because if we've got a lot of universities doing it on the same day, it might be slower than if we've only got one or two. So any of that notification, either when you plan to roll over or any new or updates to time periods, raise that via support. Update your hierarchy to ensure that modules for the new academic year are available in advance of rollover, and also that you've got your information on hierarchy code changes and that sort of thing. Complete those list checks that we discussed earlier in terms of checking the all lists report and your reviews and checking out what's been copied. And then do your staff communication prior to rollover. So as we talked about, maybe a month out and then a couple of days beforehand. Once you've completed rollover in reading lists, you might like to send another one out saying that rollover is complete and what their next steps are. If you're going to be rolling over in copyright clearance, you might want to take that into consideration and think about whether you want to do another set of comms after copyright clearance. So at this point in time, after you've rolled over your reading list, you can say, a new list is available for X time period. Just be aware that we are yet to roll over your digitizations associated with those lists. They'll be receiving emails once those digitizations are live. Offer training or direct support for new academics that haven't dealt with reading lists for a little while, or those academics were a little bit iffy last time and just need a little bit more hand-holding this time. The University of Worcester has shared their process, and at this point in time, they check modules on the student registry, and a liaison librarian will confirm the modules that are running for the next academic year, archive any lists that aren't running in that following session, or any lists that are no longer running at the university, and also identify those lists that are empty or those hierarchy nodes that are empty, and then so approach those academics who are responsible for those units who don't yet have a reading list to see if they need a reading list, if they need some support, that sort of thing. They also do a weekly report on draft and published lists to the academic services team, just so that they can monitor and follow up on that academic engagement and list ownership. So on to the options that you've got in terms of rolling over in Talis Aspire. So as I talked about before, the first one that that has been available for quite a while is the bulk rollover. So that's available to system admins, and you do that from the admin role and request time period rollover. There is this banner here. It is a long running job. So once it's submitted, progress will be visible on the review job screen, and you'll also get an email notification once it's completed. There is this notice here that it can take up to 48 hours to complete. So that is just something to bear in mind, especially if universities don't let us know that they're rolling over and roll over. You'll be added to a queue for this task to complete, and so it can take up to 48 hours. So once you've read that and say, yep, I'm aware of it, you can select your source time period, and this is the time period that you want to roll lists over from. Time periods will only be visible in this menu if there's lists available that haven't been rolled over yet. So this doesn't, even if you haven't hidden a time period in this menu, but there are no lists to roll over, you won't be able to select it. The same thing is true if you've already rolled over it at some point in time, but those unpublished lists are later published. You might choose to do a second bulk rollover, and then select the time period that you've already done, but has those new unrolled over lists, and then roll it over to that same target time period. Select whether new lists are to be in draft or new lists are to be in published. It is good to be aware that if you select to publish at the same time, it does process a little bit slower than if you select to roll over to draft only, purely because it's doing two actions when you select to roll over to published. It's creating the list and then it's publishing that list, versus if you're doing it in draft, it's just copying that list. And then there's the checkbox below that. So old lists will be archived and detached from the hierarchy. So that means that it won't be searchable on the home screen. That is a really important distinction. If you do archive your lists and you've got a little LTI, we are going to talk about LTI in a minute, but while we're talking about archiving, if you've got an LTI link and for whatever reason the academic hasn't confirmed that that linking to the right list, if it's just doing the best match, once you archive that list, there's not going to be a list available for the LTI to search and best match. So it is a good idea during the year to just confirm with your academics that they've just confirmed on the LTI that it is linking to the right list. So once you select a source and a target, next step, it will do a little bit of a review in the background and see that there are 6 published lists assigned to semester 2. And there are 2 lists currently under review. So at this point you can click cancel and finish those reviews, or have a discussion with your academics team before progressing, or it might be that, yep, cool, I'm happy, I'm just going to roll them over. This banner at the bottom is really important to be aware of. The actual amount of lists rollover may vary depending on when the job actually executes. So if between when you click request rollover and when the task actually starts in the background, if someone has created and published a new list, the number of lists will increase. If a list is archived at this point before it's picked up to be rolled over and copied, you'll have less lists. But this is just giving you a snapshot of what it is at this current point in time. So you would request a rollover. I'm not going to, but you would click request rollover, and then it would say that it's completing you can jump over to the review jobs screen, and it will list all of the jobs that you've done. And at the top, it will be the information on your rollover. So this one was completed 25 days ago, but it tells you the information that is available in this review job screen. So it tells you that it was a bulk time period from trimester 2, 2016 to trimester 3, 2016. The lists were published and the old lists were archived. So this gives you a really good summary of what you did last time. So if you can't remember, if you selected to publish your lists on Rollover, or if you decided to archive the old lists, you can jump through here and see what happened last time and reflect on whether that worked, whether there was kickback, and that sort of thing. Against all of these jobs in the queue, you can see that there's this little hamburger, the actions button, and from there you can see the details. So it just tells you how many lists. This is a very small rollover. So there was one list that was picked up for rollover and it was completed. Once that completes, you do get an email notification telling you that it's done. So you don't have to keep a watch on this review job screen. You can just go about your day and then wait for the email. So that's one way, that's bulk rollover. And again, that's available from the admin menu and request time period rollover. The other way that you can roll over is via the all lists report. So you'd go to reports, all lists, and you'd apply your filters. The important filter that you should be applying is rollover copy is empty. That means that you're not going to get any failure messages, you're not going to get any errors because, as you know, it will only roll over reading lists that have not yet already been rolled over. So that one is probably one of the first filters that I would apply, just so that I remember, and it's not something that I miss. I would recommend then pick the list status, so published lists, and select your source time period. Oops, that will go just to be different. And there are no lists that match this, so that's probably because there's nothing to roll over. Everything from that time period has been rolled over. And again, what was the test? I did test 2, didn't I? If you were using that time period filter and you did want to select everything that was published for that time period, and not at this stage select anything that's published with unpublished changes, you could select all items that are related to this particular filter result. It will give you a summary of how many lists are picked up in relation to that. And then you would click your action button and select rollover. Then it offers you the same screen that you would see in the normal rollover. And there are nice little flags here. So if you've forgotten to set some of these required filters, it will tell you straight up. So then you could jump back and apply those filters. It tells you that on completion, an email will be sent to your registered email address. So again, this is just confirming that either way, if you bulk rollover or if you roll over via the all lists report, you'll get a rollover completion email. And just a flag that once you set the bulk action job, so this rollover job off to start, you can't then cancel it. You can't reverse it. So this is really important, just to double check that you've selected the right list. At this point, you can click close and then just confirm everything's fine. And then you get the same option. So you're wanting to roll over all of these lists to a particular target time period, whether you want the new lists to be draft or published, and if you want the old lists to be archived and detached from the hierarchy. Again, you'd submit that, and you'd then go to about your day, or you could go to the review job screen and see how that is progressing. Again, it's a good reminder to know that it doesn't matter how many lists you select, it can still take up to 48 hours to complete the rollover. And as I said before, it's because it's added to a queue, and if someone else is rolling over at that same time, yours will be just added to the queue and be picked up once the one that's already in there has completed. So that's targeted rollover as well. That's what we talk about when we say targeted rollover. If you're not sure, if you just wanted information about rollover and you can't remember what it's called, you can just say rollover from the all lists report. We'll understand what that means. I did say that we would talk about LTI links and rollover. There's this really handy support article that Tim has written about this very topic. And it goes through the background information or concepts relating to the LTI. So you may or may not know, but LTI uses a basic LTI launch request to create a launch endpoint. Your learning management system will create many instances of an LTI link. So within each course, your academics are creating individual links to their reading list via the LTI, and each one of those has a new resource link ID. And each link ID is expected to be unique. And that's where it differs between systems, and it depends on how you roll over in your learning management system. And it goes through the different known rollover strategies within learning management systems. So for example, for Moodle, there are a number of rollover strategies. So it could be that there are 2 Moodle instances. So in this scenario, there's not any technical rollover that's happening in Moodle. There's a current live instance, and that's just copied across to an archive. So it's basically rolling over to archive in the back end, if you want to think about it in that way, copying to archive. So if that's the way that you're rolling over in Moodle, there's no copying of the instance, therefore you don't need to relink any of the LTIs. That's versus the more standard method of rollover in Moodle, which is modules are copied to new modules each year, and those module codes are updated, and new time periods are related to that individual course within Moodle, which means that any LTI launch links that have been copied across are given a new resource link ID. And that's why you need to get your academics to reconfirm that the best match that's made by that LTI is actually going to the correct list. If you've got, for example, if you've got 3 different lists using the same module code happening in the same semester, might be that you've got different academics teaching it, and each academic has a different version of how they run the unit. They might have different weekly readings or different arrange the topics in a different order. So at that point, it will offer them the 3 lists, and the academic can choose which list they want to select in the LTI, and they will need to do that each year. So this is a really important article that I suggest you have a second to check over, because as I said, it goes through Moodle, but it also goes through Blackboard, the different strategies, rollover strategies in Blackboard, in Canvas, and in Desire to Learn. So in most cases, It is, even if if your team do the first rollover option in Moodle, and that was to copy to archive, and so it's just a rolling list that's updated year on year on year. We do still recommend that you check with your academics and make sure that it's linking to the right list. It's just a good habit to get into. So just to recap before we move on from rolling over in Talis Aspire reading lists. So set up your new time periods and ensure that the time period you're rolling over from is available to be selected from that rollover from menu. And you do that by going to, the easiest way is to go to create a new list and then see what time periods are available in that drop down. Check your lists and your hierarchy. So do those reports that we talked about, and also update your hierarchy. Consider switching to new list edit if you've not already done so. And then think about which method you're going to be rolling over using, and that will impact the communication that you do to your academics. If at any stage you've got a question, you want to roll over webinar specific to your university, or if you need some help, don't hesitate, don't sit on any questions, just raise a support ticket. So we're going to move on to Talis Aspire copyright clearance rollover. You might know it as Talis Aspire digitized content, or TADC or TADAC. Whatever you call the system, it's rolling over your scans, your digitizations. So what we're going to talk about in relation to this is the order of events and what it means between reading lists and copyright clearance, and then a step-by-step on the rollover in Talis Aspire copyright clearance. So this is just a nice little animation of the rollover process, just so that it gets it firm in your mind what's happening. So there's a reading list and it's attached to semester 1 2020. And one of the items on that reading list has a digitisation request, number 4022, and that is currently live. I've rolled over reading list semester 1 2020 into semester 1 2021. And the benefit of the rollover process in reading lists is that it copies across any associations to any live digitisations. So this 4022 is still live, and it will be visible on both the 2020 list and the 2021 list. Once that rollover in reading list is completed, you can roll over in Talis Aspire copyright clearance, and it creates a new digitisation request. It goes through the same copyright checks to make sure that it's still within the 10% one chapter, one article from a version, an issue, that sort of thing. All the copyright checks are completed and checked. And if it's all good, it will create the new request and progress through to await going live. So digitisation request 4022 expires, and it is no longer visible on either reading list. And so now at this point in time, that new request 5000 hasn't yet become live. The start date hasn't passed, and 4022 is expired, so there are no digitisations visible on either list. Once request 5000 goes live, it appears on the new list, the rollover copy list. So to semester 1 2021, it does not appear on semester 1 2020. So that's the standard, the easy, the easiest way, the ideal way for rollover. So the order of events, as you've seen, we do recommend that you plan out to carry rollover. If you do plan to rollover in your reading lists, you do that first. Just a reminder that if you need help with rollover in reading lists, or if you want to talk about it, raise a support ticket, we're happy to help. If you don't roll over in your reading lists, you can go straight to copyright clearance at any point in time. Because Talis Aspire copyright clearance has some improvements to support this workflow, and that came out a couple of years ago now. So you can start to prepare your Talis Aspire copyright clearance items. So the suggested timeline would be to run a course report in Talis Aspire copyright clearance and complete rollover by module by module, and there's a reason we recommend that, and I'll go into that in just a second. Based on the checks that are completed in Talis Aspire, it might be that there are new editions published since the original request has gone live, and you might want to purchase any new editions where they're available. And you might find that the new edition has actually been available in E, so you might choose to withdraw a digitisation request, update the item on the reading list, and link it to the electronic version. We also recommend that at this stage you liaise with the requesters to confirm if where content has changed. So where there's a new version available, it could be, we know that when new editions of items are published, it could be that chapters are completely removed and replaced, but that academic actually is referencing a chapter that is now no longer available in that older edition. So that those types of conversations are really important to have. So this is Talis Aspire copyright clearance that I'm sure you all know and love. And this is the courses report. So I would always do this. So filter to course dates, and then add the start date and end date for the time period. I would then export this and then filter in Excel, because I love Excel, over other options that you have for spreadsheet software. And so that it specifically tells me digitizations that start on the start date that I've selected and end on the end date that I've selected. Because if at the moment, if you add in a start and end date, it will tell you anything that is live between those start dates. It's not using those as exact dates. So yes, I was always have that beside me. And then I would proceed to double check those against the reading lists. Any reading lists that weren't rolled over, you would run that report in reading lists if you did roll over in reading lists. And also identify where any course details have changed using that hierarchy upload file that you have generated, filtered to where there's a new course code. So you've got a few little spreadsheets available to you so that you can work your best and do your rollover. So there are two options for rolling over. The easiest way, the most common used way, is to go from the rollovers menu and see what's available for rollover. Again, at this stage, we would always recommend, once it loads, it's logging me back in, we would always recommend that you use the filters on screen. So we do recommend that you do course by course, or if you've got a number of courses that have the same starting phrase. So if all of your arts subjects start with ART, for example, you could enter that search term and find everything relating to that. I would also use the time period to make sure that you're selecting digitizations that are related to those course codes for that specific start and end date range. Purely because in the past you might not have rolled over something for that unit, and you don't want that to be appearing on this screen and you selecting to roll it over, and then once the validation checks come back, it tells you that you know, the item has been deleted or is not present on the current version. You don't want to see that when there is a better way of making those checks. So I've selected academic year 2020-21, which has brought back 126 requests, which is manageable. I would also tick this exact dates filter. That'll probably bring back the same. No, 4 requests. That's much better. It's not realistic for you, but it's nice for me to demo. At this point, I can select all of those because none of those course codes are changing, and they're all going to have the start and end date that I select. So at this point, I've selected all of them, and I'm clicking the little hamburger and selecting to edit and pre-clear. I'd always select edit and pre-clear because it gives you a chance to review everything once it's gone through those validation checks. And these are the types of checks that you can expect to see. So potential problems, rollover can't proceed until these are addressed. So there's one request that's linked to a reading list that does not appear to have rolled over. So you can use this filter by request option to see exactly which request that's referencing. And so I can tick it and either resolve it. I can say manually link or link to a new request. Or because it's only one, I can clear those filters and select. Actually, because there's a second thing here saying for requests in this queue have current start dates in the future. So it will ask me to remove them from here anyway. Sorry, my cat is wanting to play fetch now. So at this point in time, you can override those, or you can select to remove them from this queue. And so that you can see in this queue everything that is available to roll over. In this case, there won't be any because there were only 4 requests. So this queue is empty, which is a nice message to see. So I can remove that queue. It will then take me to the other queues that have been set up and are waiting some sort of action. So I can jump into this one. For example, it's got 33 requests and some action is needed. So you can see at the top of this queue's flag that these are all actually referred. If there were some requests in here that were rejected, there'd be a second tab, and I can jump onto that tab and address them from there. Or if I didn't want to handle these in this specialized workflow, if I just wanted to handle them with all of my other referred and rejected requests that come in naturally from the reading lists, I can do that. You'll have probably noticed that for a couple of years now, you're not getting that success tab. The success tab was a little bit redundant because they had successfully rolled over and it was just requiring you to do an additional step, highlight them and say, just roll them over. So now the system will automatically do that. If it's not found to have any sort of copyright infringements or new edition flags or existing copy, electronic copy flags, it will just complete that rollover and they'll just progress to live. So there's one less thing for you to have to do. The other way that you can roll over is by going to an individual request. So if we just jump onto the all request screen, you'd filter by a particular course code. So you'd jump onto a live or expired request, and from the actions menu, begin rollover pre-clearance. So you get a similar sort of scenario that you get on the edit and pre-clear. You'd see the start and end dates. So this automatically adds on 12 months to the start and end date of the original request. It pulls through the same requester details and the course code details. So this is where you could change the course code, student numbers, and that sort of thing if they're different. Add extra courses if this is now a reading list that's being used by a couple of course codes and that sort of thing. So once you're happy, you would click pre-clear rollover, and that would start the pre-flight checks to make sure that this digitization can roll over. So this one has gone through, it's all okay. And you can see that it's progressing, processing packing, and it's through to the success status. So if I just refresh my screen, it will have gone through to live. Because that original item, we'll just jump back, because that original item wasn't linked to a reading list item, it hasn't done any linking to a reading list item. So again, you can manually link to an item. It might be that this is for something that doesn't have a reading list, and the academic is just manually requested a digitisation just for one item, and they're sharing it on their course in their learning management system. That's fine too. That's how that goes. So it's the same sort of a process. It needs to be live or expired, and it copies all the information from the original request over. There's a really great support article that walks through your Talis Aspire digitised content rollover options with screenshots called TADSI Rollover Step by Step, and it details out these options. So I'd recommend that prior to rollover, you do just take a squiz at this article just to make sure that you're going to that you're fully up to date. Just going to highlight some of those key points that I did talk about, but they are really important. We do recommend that you filter the available for rollover screen by module and by start date. As we said before, it's just to make sure that you're rolling over modules that need to be rolled over. So as we said, something might not be running this semester, and also the start date, because you might have old requests that were removed from old editions and weren't rolled over. They will still appear in the available for rollover queue. Second key point is to use the edit and pre-clear option so that you can confirm the start and end dates, and that make any changes to course codes. There are some validation checks. We saw a couple of those in that demo. So it tells you if there are any rollover date conflicts. So if the digitisation is being rolled over, but the start date is before now. If there are any double rollovers, so it tries to prevent or highlight where a request is dated into the future. If there's no reading list rollover, and it gives you those options to manually link or link to the existing reading list, that's particularly important if you're not rolling over your reading lists. It will also flag where an item has been deleted from a list, and so you can remove it from your queue and not worry about processing those requests. This is that email confirmation that I talked about earlier, where the rollover queue has progressed and it needs a little bit of review. And again, just highlighting that you can manage those options from the queue jobs screen and go queue by queue, or you can do it in bulk with all of your other digitisation processes, looking at those that are referred and those that have been rejected. And this was snapped at the point in time where it's progressing. It's been cleared by copyright, and so the system is just progressing it through to live status. So it'll sit in success for a couple of minutes, and then it will go through to live. So this is an important flag. If any originally referred requests were referred due to a source needing to be acquired, or if the serials coverage was undetermined at that point in time, and it can still no longer be determined, and was manually overridden, every time you roll over, it will do those same flags. It might be that you couldn't acquire that, it's an old text and you couldn't purchase it at the original when the request was originally processed. So now when you check, there are some out of print copies available at a reasonable price, so you can acquire it and then add that to your library, and that will be picked up in the next time that you roll over. Or series coverage undetermined. Again, you'll just need to double check through that link resolver link on the digitisation request if you hold it electronically. We all know that things change, but where the same outcome occurs, it will take the previous response as given. And this is just a reminder that if course codes change after rollover happens, so we know that fact can happen. So you can actually update course codes using the courses report. Filter to the course code and the start and end date, and then identify the course that you're wanting to update. Click the Actions button and click the Edit Course Details. It will allow you to edit the course code, course name, and student numbers. Bear in mind, if there is a course that has the same code that you're wanting to update to and occurs at the same start and end date. At the moment, Talis by copyright clearance won't let you do that because it doesn't currently rerun those copyright checks. So we don't want the system to merge those two courses and then have digitizations that are duplicate or that exceed the copyright now that we know that those course names are correct. So before doing this, it is, if it does flag that they are the same course, just double check that copyright hasn't been exceeded because tab C was told that they were two separate courses. So a recap. If you're rolling over in reading lists, do that before you do your digitizations rollover. Use the module code and date filters to identify the requests for rollover so that you've got a structured process for rolling over your requests. Complete the rollover and watch out for those validation checks. If you're not sure whether to override, you can remove them from your queue and then just do an investigation. What you don't want to happen is to override and link it to the same reading list when that reading list is actually present. It's an old reading list. So that is something to be aware of. A reminder that outside of rollover, you can update your course details using that course report by courses. If at any stage you've got questions or something's happening and you're not sure what to do, just raise a support ticket and give us the details and we can help you. That's it for today. We don't have any questions, but thanks so much for attending. If you do have questions after the session, raise a support ticket and we can answer them online. And thanks, guys. You have a great afternoon.